Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Hello, listener. It's Lara Jane, and I have an amazing guest with us today. Her name is Julie, and everything about Julie is in the show notes already for you to just take advantage of. She's an author. She's going to talk to us about habits that help us to reduce our stress. And as corporate executives and busy managers, we have a lot of stress. So what kind of habits can we add to our lives to help reduce that craziness of just having too much? So I am going to turn the time over to Julie and let her tell you about habits that reduce stress. Take it over, Julie.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I think that you're going to love this. This is perfect for everyone listening because I talk all about high performance habits for high performers, high achievers, these busy women that their lives are really full and they really want to kind of get things dialed in so that they can have a life they love, but also still really be, kind of crushing it at work and showing up as their best selves. So that's what really inspired me to write my book. It's called A Few Good Habits. It's out this fall. And it's really been inspired by what I've learned over the past 10 years, several years in my journey becoming a, busy mom that is running a business and trying to figure out, how do I get my stress under control? How do I continue to be a high performer and do really great at my work without burning out, without anxiety, without becoming, a grouch because I'm so tired at the end of the day from my busy schedule. And, after years of studying this stuff, I kind of realized there's a lot of bad advice out there. And there's a lot of advice that's particularly, I think, unhelpful and even toxic, I would say, for busy moms. Yes. Some of these people writing these books and putting out this information, they're single or they are entrepreneurs that can completely control their schedule or they don't have kids. And they're saying things like, well, just sleep until your body is ready to wake up. And, kind of things like that where I'm like, who can do that? I'm an entrepreneur.
Kids woke me up.
My kids' school would be pretty mad if I rolled in at 10 a.m. with a latte, sorry, our bodies weren't ready to wake up. Right. So some of the advice was so impractical. So I really, focus on what's the best of the best advice out there. I'm not a researcher. So I pulled in from the research that exists and looked at what are the core habits that we really need to focus on? Get rid of the fluff. Let's just go back to common sense because I think we've overcomplicated things. We've got these 20-step plans. We've got fancy apps. We've got all this stuff, right? All this stuff to organize our lives. And I think we lost the plot, right? And I think common sense is not always common practice. And really the thing that we need to do is go back to basics and focus on some core practices that are really going to give us a strong foundation to live from. We don't need to add more and more things to our lives. We just need to take care of the basics. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And then we can run from there.
Yes, let's do it. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I love to talk about is the idea that we just try to make things so complicated and we try to overhaul our lives all at once. And that's where we tend to get into trouble. I've totally been guilty of this where, I'm going to cut out sugar. I'm going to eat clean. I'm going to work out an hour every day and I'm going to, launch a new business and just do all the things at once. And then I would find that I couldn't maintain it for very long. You can keep it up for a week or two and then everything comes crashing down. And then you end up beating yourself up. What's wrong with me? Why can't I do all the things? But I think we put too much pressure on ourselves. So that's why the book is A Few Good Habits, because it's okay, what are those core things that we can focus on? And then also, how can we make them practical and doable so we don't get overwhelmed? So I really focused on habits that, number one, reduce stress. And because I think, we all struggle with stress. I mean, I think everybody, but especially busy moms, busy working women. And so I want that high impact, that double whammy of, in a positive way of like, what can I do that's going to make me feel better? That's going to give me more energy. That's going to reduce my stress and have this trickle down effect that's going to help me in all areas of my life. And I really boiled it down to a few things. And one of the top things I'll tell you is exercise. And it's one of those things that you hear a lot and you're like, yeah. Like, I know. We're supposed to exercise, right? And, but like, it wasn't until I really dug into the research on like why exercise was important that I really kind of got on board, to be honest. Because I was like, like I've been with my husband for over 20 years. Like, I'm good. I'm not trying to impress anybody. Like, I don't need to be wearing a bikini. And so it wasn't like the motivation of like, oh, I need to like be super fit or, look like some model or something. Yeah. But I was like, oh, exercise is actually the number one high impact habit that's going to be a cornerstone and have this amazing trickle down effect. There's actually research that if you start a regular exercise routine, you end up sleeping better, you have less stress. And some funny side ones too that they found in research is like people that exercise more smoke less. They use their credit cards less. Like all these crazy things. Like exercise is, they sometimes call it a keystone habit because it has this unexpected trickle down effect to where when you start getting in regular exercise, it truly impacts all areas of our lives. And the stress was a big one for me. So I'll kind of take a breath and see if you have any questions there.
I think for me, it was always, I don't have time. Mm-hmm. You get up in the morning and you are feeding the kids and getting them off school, jumping in the car, commuting to work. You've got a full day and usually more than 8 hours. And then you're coming home and you're cooking dinner and you're getting the kids to bed. Where do you find time to fit that in? And I know that some people do 5 minutes at a time and stuff. How do you find in that really busy schedule time to actually set aside to do exercise?
Yeah, I hear you. Like, because like you said, your schedule's so busy. And if I put it off into the evening, it's not going to be happening if I'm completely honest with myself, because by that point I'm exhausted. So personally, I try to fit it in first thing in the morning, even if it means I have to get up a little bit earlier to get it in. And I used to think like, I don't have the time, like I can't afford to take the time to do it. But at this point, I truly believe I can't afford not to, right? I don't have the time not to. Kind of like that old saying of like, if you don't have time to meditate for 30 minutes, then you should do an hour or something. Yes. Like that. Right?
I've heard that.
Right. If you don't have the time, you need it more than the normal person. Because I really find like if I get that exercise in, I'm setting myself up for the day so much better. And trust me, like I'm not the type of person that's like all gung ho for exercise. And, people talk about the endorphins and everything. Usually I'm not feeling the endorphins like right after, like I'm exhausted, I'm a sweaty mess. So it's one of those things I had to kind of make myself do. But then when I got into the routine, I realized, okay, when I do this, number one, the big thing is you're burning off the adrenaline and the cortisol that you have built up from stress. So the way I like to think of it is, we've all heard of the term sleep debt, where if you're behind on your sleep, it adds up and it's kind of a compounding effect. Well, the same thing happens with stress. I call it stress debt because it's the same concept. Like if you're not managing your stress on a day-to-day basis, if you're not doing things to reduce your stress levels, number one, and the stressors in your life, but also number two, to deal with the stress that you're carrying in your body, because stress is a body thing. It's not just a mental thing, it's a body thing. So if you're not doing something every day to address that stress, then you get into stress debt. It keeps adding up and adding up because we have stress every single day. So I kind of, a simple analogy is, let's say you earn 10 units of stress every day. You go to bed at night, you get a great night's sleep. Let's say that knocks off 7 units of stress. Well, when you wake up in the morning, you still have 3. And because it's a typical day, you add another 10, you go to bed with 13 now, right? So you get the idea is like, you can start digging yourself further and further into stress debt if you're not getting a good night's sleep, and then doing something to burn off that stress during the day. Exercise, number one way, hands down. There's so much research behind this that it's the number one way to address the stress in your body. And it made so much sense when I realized stress is like fight or flight. A big component of stress is sending your body, your nervous system, into fight or flight mode. We can kind of hang out there. And I think I lived in fight or flight mode, at least a low level fight or flight mode, for years. So if I were to look at my stress debt, I'd be millions of dollars in debt or something, because I had so much stress and I've dealt with anxiety my entire life, and I just didn't really know how to cope with it. And I think a lot of times when we're super stressed, when we're super busy, our good habits are the first thing to go. Yeah. Like, I don't have time for the healthy cooking. I don't have time to sleep. I got to stay up late and get my stuff done. I don't have time to exercise, right? I think a lot of us are guilty of this. And especially like moms, we tend to put our kids first, our families first. And if we don't take care of ourselves and do something to chip away at that stress debt, we're going to end up paying for it one way or another. And I certainly did. But exercise, that's a great way. So I prioritize it in the morning. And then that way I burn off that excess adrenaline, that cortisol. And you'll find yourself too, like when you're super stressed, like you get all tense, like you realize your shoulders are up by your ears, right? You're clenching your jaw. I know so many women that have chipped teeth from clenching their jaw. We're carrying around a lot. And the easiest way to burn off that stress, because fight or flight, when you think about it, that's wanting action. Your body's wanting to throw a punch or run like hell. Like your body's asking for action. And then if we're just sitting at a desk and we're not moving and we're not doing anything to get out that energy, we end up paying for it. So that's why exercise is such a good way to burn off that energy. And it doesn't have to take forever. You can do a 20, 30-minute workout. The big thing is to get that heart rate up. So do it like moderate to intense activity. But like you said, a lot of people just do 5 minutes. And believe it or not, there's a lot of research that even just 2 minutes of intense exercise every day can have huge health benefits and actually extend the length of your life. So even if you can only do 2 minutes, I call them exercise snacks. Right? They're little bite-sized pieces of exercise that you can just work into your day. Do some jumping jacks, like put on a song and dance. The average song is a couple of minutes long. Like put on music and dance. Do something you like, because that's the thing. If you dread it, if you're like, I hate running, and then you're trying to make yourself run every day, you're way less likely to do it. I have a lot of friends that hula hoop, and they've lost a ton of weight, and they love it, and they put on music, and they have fun. Anything counts. Any kind of movement counts. So I would say, number one, make it a priority. Schedule it in like an appointment that is non-negotiable. And then once you get the habit started, it helps. And I have some tips on how you can make it a little bit easier. And then just know also, it doesn't have to take an hour. Like you don't have to do hour-long workouts. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to have fancy equipment. You can have a dance party in your office. You can run around the block, do jumping jacks, whatever you want. But make it easy, make it simple, and make it fun. I think that's the best way to get started.
Wow. I'm now curious what the others are, because I hate exercise.
Yeah, always say start there, even if it's like those bite-sized ones, like make it a game, even of like, what can I do for 2 minutes? Right. Do you like to dance?
I have found myself doing that once in a while.
Yeah. I'm not a huge dancer, so I get that.
I have a sister-in-law that loves Zumba. She just says it's just fun. I go because it's fun, not because it's good for me. Yeah. And it's like, I'm one day going to figure out how to adopt that attitude.
Yeah. Well, like you said, part of it is an attitude, right? Part of it is just deciding that you're going to make it fun. I did a cardio drumming class at Hawaii pre-pandemic, and I'm not coordinated. I don't really dance because I'm really not coordinated. And I'm also an introvert. So I was like, oh God, a group exercise class. So not only am I sweating and like doing this weird, like I'm doing it with a group, but I actually loved it because the community and the music was great and the instructor was great. So sometimes, it is finding those things outside of our comfort zone. Sometimes it's like, what can I do that's the easiest? Jumping jacks. I can do that anywhere, right? So finding that easy thing. I'll tell you that my kind of number 2 is sleep, which again is one of those things that we hear all the time. And it's like, yeah. Like I know that, I've heard it before. But when you really look at what the lack of sleep is doing to us, it's crazy the way it messes up our hormones. It really has that trickle down effect where we're not as sharp. And I know for me, my brain being slow is a big deal. So during the pandemic, I got to the point where I had an injury and I wasn't working out. And this was also before I really learned all the things that I know now. And so I wasn't working out. I wasn't sleeping well. I had 2 kids at home doing school for a year, thanks to the pandemic. I was working probably 50-hour weeks pre-pandemic. It probably got more like 60-hour weeks because now I had an 8-year-old at home who was at the time undiagnosed with ADHD and constantly interrupting me because he was a second grader trying to do Zoom classes, right? So my days just got longer and longer and my stress got higher and my anxiety really kind of like hit that tipping point where I just kind of had a breakdown, honestly, during the pandemic because it was too much. And I found myself having so much brain fog where I would grasp for a word. I'd be like, yeah, where it's the thing, and it would drive me nuts that I couldn't even find words sometimes.
I blame that on age. Come on.
Well, I'm in my 40s. But sometimes it is. But sometimes, really, when your stress is that high, when you're not sleeping well, that brain fog, I'm telling you, that was a big motivator for me to really kind of figure things out. And I would get so snippy with my family, because honestly, by the end of the day, like I would keep it together, like for the job. And I would be like the patience of a saint with my clients and things. But by the end of the day, I didn't have anything left to give. I was so exhausted. And then I was doing that thing that a lot of moms do of revenge bedtime, they call it, where you stay up extra late because it's like nobody needs me, nobody's touching me, nobody's asking for anything, right? And you stay up late and you have a glass of wine or whatever.
I love it.
But then you pay for it. Like you pay for it when you don't get that sleep. So I'd say the other thing is if you're not getting at least 7 hours of sleep, ideally closer to 8 or even 9 hours. You have to kind of know what your body needs. You're really doing yourself a disservice because, I think back to the stress debt. I was saying that like sleep can take off a good 7 points of your 10 points for the day for your stress debt. If you're not getting that, well, you're probably not even taking off the 7 points, right? So sleep is one of those bare minimum things that I think we take it for granted, is it that big of a deal? It really is that big of a deal. It just really is that big of a deal. If you're not getting the sleep, it hurts your metabolism. It hurts, your brain power because your brain really takes care of a lot of processes, while you're sleeping. So if you're not getting the sleep and you're not exercising, honestly, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage to be able to show up at your best, to have clear thinking, to have the energy to get through the day and to really show up as your best self.
Amazing. Because yes, I know that it's hard to get that kind of sleep, especially if you have young kids, and you don't get to make it up on weekends. It doesn't matter if you're going to work or not. Children still are awake. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the exercise because I have some questions around durations and effort, and then a little bit more about sleep because I've never really learned all the sleep cycles and how does it matter. So we're going to just walk away for a second, let the sponsor take over, and then we're going to be right back. So talk to you in a second.
This podcast is sponsored by Lara Jane Coaching. You're ready to silence your inner bully voice. Let Lara Jane support you with coaching. To schedule an introduction call, go to larajanelayton.com.
Welcome back. So I'm dying to ask these questions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start. I don't even know which one to start with because I'm just full of questions. So
yeah,
I am not been someone who's taken good care of my health. And I definitely let it all build up until I ended up with heart problems. And at that point, it's like, okay, it's either do or die. And so now it's time to turn your life around. And my goal with my podcast is to catch people before they get that far into the goal. So this is perfect for our listener. So when it comes to exercise, you have the gym rats who do a lot of lifting. You have the people who do the running. Is it just the simple portion of raising your heart rate, or do you need to do all the other stuff also? Because I can dance in my front room and build my heart rate up. But I remember back, my kids were pretty young, and I decided we're going to go for a walk. And we were walking around the block, and I ran into somebody, and I said, "Oh, we're just out getting some exercise." And he's like, "This isn't exercise." And I went, "Oh, okay. So what's exercise? When does it become a walk versus exercise?"
Well, honestly, I think any movement qualifies, right? So I don't let somebody out there that's like policing, what exercise is.
I never went on a walk again. That was the last time I walked around the block.
Oh, gosh.
If it's not exercise, I'm wasting my time.
Oh, no. Yeah. Here's the thing with a walk is still great exercise. And number two, you are outside, which is amazing because being outside, literally just being outside reduces your stress levels. Again, so much research on this, just being outside in nature, seeing the different patterns, being in the sunshine, literally just getting outside and moving whether you move your body or not, just being outside is good for you. But you had a twofer there, right? You were outside and you were moving your body. Now, if you're taking a really leisurely slow, a pretty slow.
Well, I had little kids with me. Come on.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like walking a curious dog, you're stopping a lot. Right. So you're probably not going to get your heart rate up. I would say maybe walk a little bit longer if you can in that case, because if you're going to do kind of low level, not very intense activity, you just want to do it a little bit longer. If you do moderate or intense activity, that's when you can do those exercise snooks. That's when you can do a HIIT workout, a high intensity interval workout. Those are really good if you're you know what? I don't have a lot of time. I want to get my heart rate up fast and I want to get more bang for my buck, basically. That's when you want to do the higher intensity activities that are you don't have to do them very long and you're going to have a lot of benefit from the short period of time. If you're my doctor says I can't do that, that's actually bad for me, or there's something physically limiting me where that's just not possible for me, that's okay too. Just try to get in that less intense exercise, get it in over a longer period of time. And if you need to, break it up, take a walk in the morning and a walk in the evening. You don't have to do it all at once either. The thing is, it does add up. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of new research that's come out that even 1 to 2 minutes of intense exercise can have a huge benefit to your health. So if 1 or 2 minutes of intense activity can help, then less intense, longer activity can also help. So you really just have to see what works for you, in my opinion. And I mean, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a workout professional or something, but in my opinion, from the research that I read, just plain moving your body, something's better than nothing, number one. And if you find something that you enjoy, that means a lot.
Yeah.
Because if, like I said, if you're making yourself miserable, you're not going to keep it up. You're just not. That's human nature. If you're doing something that's a slog and you hate it and you're not seeing the benefits pretty quickly, you're probably not going to keep it up. And the other thing I'll say, in order to kind of get into the habit, because sometimes starting is the hardest part. Once you get going and you have the routine and it is truly a habit, a lot of times it's easier to maintain. But starting, that can be my goodness, you could put that off for weeks, right? Keep thinking I don't have time. I'll do it later. So I always say start with the habit of just showing up. Even if it is a minute and it's not intense, be every morning at 9 a.m., I'm going to walk for 1 minute. That's it. Keep it really simple. And the other thing is having that plan. There's so much research behind this one too, of the idea that motivation and willpower, they don't work. They just don't work. Because motivation and willpower, I think, are limited resources. And if we're just trying to grit our way through and make ourselves do something, we're not going to do it, or we're going to do it for a while, but it's going to wane and we're going to lose that motivation. That's why so many New Year's resolutions are gone by February, right?
Mm-hmm.
Girl Scout cookies come around in February, March, like done with the diet, right? So
you need to do those in December.
Yeah, I know. There's actually a chapter in my book about willpower, and it's called "Willpower Won't Stop You from Eating the Thin Mints." My diet nemesis, right?
I think those are one of my favorites. So
mine too. They're always my favorite. They're like, you can't resist. So the idea that you're just going to use your motivation to meet your goals, it's just one of those myths that we just need to get rid of. And the thing that they have found through study is going to work the best is planning. And again, so basic, but literally just saying when, where, and what you're going to do can make the difference between you doing it and not. And you may think like, does it really make that big of a difference? It does. Like they've actually studied this in research studies. So just even you saying, you know what, I'm going to work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And it's just I'm going to start with 1 minute, literally 1 minute, and I'm going to walk around the block. If you know when and where you're going to do it, what days, for how long, you are a million times more likely to actually do the thing versus like, I'm going to start exercising and I'm going to do it every day. And it's like, if you go way over the top, or you're like, I'm going to do it every day, but you don't know when and you don't know where, you don't know what you're going to do. What's going to happen is you're going to get up and the kids are going to need things. So you got to get off to work and then you're like, I'll figure it out later. And then it never happens. Right.
You're making me remember. Have you seen Flow Rope?
No.
Okay. So this is something my brother's really into, and he's pretty advanced at it right now. And it's fun. It's like jump rope without having to jump. So you've got these ropes. Yes. And you just are swinging them around. And I thought, you know what, this could be fun. And so for Christmas, I bought everybody flow ropes and started a club at work, and we'd go out at noon and we'd flow. And, it was fun. And when you add that element of fun, it's not work anymore, because it became a social, everybody had an excuse to walk out of the office. Yes. And, here we again kind of feel kind of dumb because you're sitting in the parking lot where everybody could look out the window and we're doing this flow rope shit. Yeah.
We're looking dumb together, so it's fine.
But it was like being a kid again, when you're out at recess jumping rope and you just let that go. And it was amazing how much more productive the afternoons were after we got out and did that. Now, a lot of them went for walks. A lot of them did other things, but we made it a point 3 times a week. We put it on our calendar and we scheduled it and we did it. And then I decided to retire and come home. And so I haven't done it since, but I have those ropes. I should get them out.
Then, do it on your own lunch hour, right? So I think you're doing something there, right?
Yeah, I think scheduling it is really important. I think you were talking about the planning, and I live and breathe by my calendar. Yes. And so if I just put it on there, like between whatever time of day or lunch, that I'm going to do this, whether it's 5 minutes or not. And when you start with the flow ropes, they are it looks so simple, but you can break a sweat in 5 minutes. Yeah. And you're just like, oh my gosh, this is
like a hit out exercise,
so,
right?
Yeah, look it up on YouTube. It's flow rope, and you can go out and you can see these really fit guys within 5 minutes pouring sweat, which is another thing that's really good for your body, is to purge that out.
That's so true.
So, I agree with the planning. I agree with, just do it. Do something fun so you look forward to it. And, that when I was able to do it with people, it was way more fun than doing it by myself.
For sure.
But I want to switch, if it's okay, to sleep, because as a busy parent or executive who gets called into meetings, or if you're working around the clock because you have offshore team members and stuff, you get interrupted with sleep. I had a project I was doing, had people from India and people from Israel, and I was having meetings in the middle of the night to make sure that everybody's calendars were scheduled, that we can all meet. So when you start doing that, it's really tough to get 7 hours. And especially if you're on like all these people that are on call and they have to wake up if their phone goes off and they have to get out of bed. Yeah. So there's things that like we lose control of our lives because we want money. This little evil, like I can see where they say the money is the root of all evil, just because it really does drive us in a way that you roll out of bed going, I'm only getting up because I have to go to work, because I have to have money, because I have all these things I want to pay for or buy. Yeah. So how do you find the ability to have quality sleep? I'm not worried about quantity. I think eventually you're going to get your 6 to 8 hours. I think my average is 6.5, but I feel rested at that. And I know there's people that only need 4 because they go through all the right sleep cycles in that 4 hours. And when they're out, they're out. They go, right to that sleep cycle that we all miss, even though some people will sleep 12 hours and not get rested. So how do we make sure we get quality sleep?
Yeah. And I will say, I would say the people that say they can get by on 4 hours is pretty rare. They've done enough research over the past 50 years to say the majority of people, the vast majority of people need 7+ hours. And when my kids were little, they were terrible sleepers and they were 5 years apart. So basically for 10 years, I didn't sleep, it felt like, right? So if you have really small children, or my husband has a job, like you mentioned, he's in IT. And so he gets calls in the middle of the night and things like that. So there are definitely circumstances where you're going to have interrupted sleep. And unfortunately, it's sometimes, hopefully it's a phase, with the kids. If it's a job, there's not always, something you can do. If you can, try to see if you can get on some schedule where you're not interrupted. But if you can't, then I would say just do everything you can to control the things you can control, right? So you can't control the kids getting up. You can't control that call in the middle of the night if that's your job. But are you at least trying to get to bed earlier? My husband's guilty of this. He knows he's going to get woken up probably in the middle of the night, but he still stays up late. And I'm like, go to bed earlier, right? So shifting your bedtime to a little bit earlier. A lot of times you can't, shift your wake up time to later because you got to get up to go to work or to get the kids to school or whatever. So control the things you can. Go to bed a little bit earlier. And then there's, things that they call good sleep hygiene. Again, fairly basic, but make sure the room is nice and dark and that it's cool. So they've actually done studies that show that we do better when we're cooler. So even 68 to 70 degrees or so, which is fairly cool, especially in the summer. If it's really hot, that's a lot to run the AC. But as much as you can, drop that temperature down. Make sure the room is nice and dark. Make sure you're not staring at a screen for an hour before bed. Again, it sounds so basic, but these things matter and they do impact your sleep quality. So if you're staring at that screen, if you've got the blue light before bed, it is going to be harder to fall asleep because at this point, you're messing with your circadian rhythm. The other thing is not eating too close to bedtime. You want to make sure you stop eating about 3 hours or so, 3 or 4 hours before bedtime, because otherwise your body is too busy digesting food to start shifting into sleep mode. And you're not going to sleep as soundly if you've eaten really close to bedtime. So if at all possible, stop eating before. If you're getting up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, maybe stop drinking a little, don't be hydrating right before bed too much, right? And then the other thing is alcohol and caffeine. And, we think about caffeine, that seems a little bit more obvious, right? But how long it takes your body to burn off that caffeine, it's quite a while. You really shouldn't be drinking caffeine past lunchtime. Or past maybe 2 o'clock, because it really takes that long for it to get out of your system. So stop the caffeine really early in the day. And you really don't even want to be drinking alcohol closer to bedtime. And a lot of times we think it's a depressant, it's going to help me sleep. And it may actually help you fall asleep a little bit faster, but it's actually going to disrupt your sleep cycles like you were talking about. So the quality of your sleep is not going to be as good, and you're not going to get the restoration that you need. Now, I had to kind of have this one proved to me. A lot of women like to have a glass of wine before bed. I had this really great margarita mix. I used to always have a margarita in the evening, right? And I thought, no, it helps me wind down. It helps me sleep. Well, I got this Oura ring, this sleep tracker. And I started realizing that if I had a drink in the evening, and it was several hours before bed still, have you ever heard of heart rate variance? Mm-hmm. An HRV score. So that's one of the things the sleep tracker tells you. And if I drank in the evening, my heart rate would be up. It would take longer for it to come down. And when you're doing that, when you're having your heart rate stay high, your body's not recovering as well. You may not even be getting the deep sleep that you need. So trust me, this is one of those things that I had to literally see the data from my own body to believe. I didn't want to give up my drink in the evening. But just cleaning up some really basic things like caffeine, alcohol, the environment that we're sleeping in, that it's dark, that it's cool, that we're not staring at a screen. And then anything you need to do to wind your brain down. Because for a lot of us, that's the hardest part is end of the day, we start thinking about oh, I should have got this done. Oh no, that went wrong today. Oh my gosh, I got all this stuff to do tomorrow. So having a routine to kind of wind your brain down in the evening, I think can be really, really helpful for a lot of us too. Put it on paper, write things down, keep it.
That's what I was going to say. I like to write it down so I don't wake up in the middle of the night going, I forgot.
Because you wake up. So whether it's a grocery list or the things that you just don't want to forget to take care of, on paper if you can, so you're not staring at your screen. And the last thing I'll say is have a bedtime routine. Treat yourself like a toddler. We all know, if you're a mom, how kids value a bedtime routine. I don't think we outgrow that, honestly. Our bodies like the routine. Have something that you do, where you start getting yourself wound down for bed. You change, you get ready, you read a little, you do something to kind of wind yourself down. I find having that routine really helpful. I tend to listen to a meditation app as I fall asleep. And if I don't have it on, I notice it takes me way longer to go to sleep. So yeah, treat yourself like a toddler and have that bedtime routine. And I think it helps a lot in terms of quality of sleep.
So I know you've talked about a lot of things, but there's one thing you talked about. I want more information.
Okay.
And that's that O-ring thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's called
I want to buy one of those.
Yeah. Yeah. So OURA, Oura ring. It was what it's called.
RAIN. Rain or ring?
Yeah, so it's literally a ring.
A ring. Okay.
Yeah, so you literally wear, instead of, because I didn't want to sleep in a watch to track my sleep, right? So it's literally a ring that you wear on your finger. But it's OURA, or a ring, and it's a really advanced sleep tracker, and it's really fascinating. I don't know how they do it, but they can tell you how much deep sleep you got, how much REM sleep you got, and how much you woke up through the night, was it restful or not, and then how long it took you to fall asleep. Because one of the things you mentioned earlier was, some people they could fall asleep like that, which is always really kind of annoying. It tends to be men in my experience. But if you actually fall asleep within 1-2 minutes, actually means you're overly tired. It's actually a bad sign if you fall asleep in 1 minute. So you've probably pushed yourself a little bit too far and you've fallen asleep too fast, because I've actually had that come up on the ring before where it was ooh, you fell asleep in 2 minutes. That's actually bad. So you don't want to take forever, but if you're out like that, it may be a bad sign that you've pushed yourself to the point of exhaustion.
I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I've never heard that if you fall asleep too fast, you've overtired yourself.
Yeah.
Does that mean we should try to go to bed earlier if that happens? Oh, what's the fix for that? Or is it be like my dad and just come home, fall asleep in front of the TV all night and then have a hard time falling asleep?
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, right? So if you do have disrupted sleep at night, so if you have one of those jobs or if you have kids, they're getting you up in the middle of the night, a good power nap can actually be a good thing, but you don't want to do it too late in the day. If you do it after I think it's 2 or 3 in the afternoon, then you start messing with your bedtime, and you don't want to sleep too long either. I think they tend to say about 30 minutes is a good little nap. But if you go too long, too late in the day, it disrupts your sleep. The other thing is a lot of people have undiagnosed sleep apnea. So if you are somebody that sits down for 1 minute and you're still, and then boom, you're asleep, either you're not sleeping enough or you might want to talk to your doctor about sleep apnea. somebody in my family recently went into the doctor for a checkup, not for that. And while he was waiting for like 10 minutes in the room, fell asleep, and the doctor came in and he'd fallen asleep, and they're like, yeah, I think we need to test you for sleep apnea. Right. So it's one of those things that you're probably not getting enough, or you may have something like that you need to look into.
Well, let's talk about sleep apnea really quick, because I have sleep apnea and I did not know until after I had heart problems, and they found it during some of my heart tests. Mm-hmm. So it's also a major contributor to AFib, which is a heart problem. So if you do fall asleep in the middle of the day, or when first time you sit down, yes, please. I'm not a medical professional. Julie's not a medical professional, but go get checked, because it only compounds the problems to your body if you are not sleeping right. And when you deplete your body of that oxygen during the night, it destroys parts of your body. So I'm glad you brought it up. Not that I ever wanted to tell everybody I sleep with a mask every night, but you know what? It is the best thing. And I used to fall asleep immediately, and I never really connected the two, that now I don't.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Oh, I'm not overly tired.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really fascinating to me. And like, I had never thought about alcohol before actually messing with your sleep quality, because I was just like, well, if anything, it makes me sleepy, right? So like, that would have to be a good thing. So I never really thought about that. And then whenever I could really clearly see, like, it's pretty rare for me to drink at this point, because I'm like, I want my sleep. I want my good quality sleep.
You know, so many people that have a glass of wine to go to bed.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been told it's good. And I've been, like, have that red wine at night and do.
I almost have it earlier. Like, because there is,
have it with dinner.
Yeah, exactly. Have it with dinner, but just make sure it's at least, I think they say about 4 hours before bed. So if you have it earlier, you have it with your dinner, then it's going to wear off by bedtime. It shouldn't impact your sleep. But also, if you do have a sleep tracker, play with that. See if that's the case for you. You may be like, ooh, actually I have to do it like 5 hours before bed. I don't know what it is. It still messes with my sleep. So if you have the ability to track it and see what's true for you, because different metabolism levels and stuff, like different people are going to burn off the alcohol faster. But yeah, just have it earlier. So you don't have to like give up alcohol altogether. Just make sure you have it earlier. And then even if you don't have a sleep tracker, notice the difference. Be like, okay, well, had a glass of wine with dinner at 6 o'clock. I actually felt like I slept pretty good, and I felt good in the morning, versus when I had it at 9 o'clock at night. Yeah, I didn't feel quite as rested in the morning whenever I woke up. Or if you do have a tracker, like, was your heart rate up, and did you feel more restless?
And I think that's all great information. Now, your book, you said, is coming out in the fall.
Yes.
Is it available for pre-order already?
It's not available for pre-order, but if you go to my website, you can get a sneak peek. So I actually put the introduction, the first chapter of the book, online, where you can get it for free. And then you can kind of get a feel for it, see if you're going to like it. And then we're looking at probably October for the book to actually come out. But then if you get the sneak peek, you'll be one of the first people to know when it comes out.
Okay. So the other question on this is it going to be on Amazon? Because I'm an Amazon junkie.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the first place.
I don't know where you buy anything else other than Amazon.
I love to support local bookstores, but I have to admit, I'm a bit of an Amazon junkie. So
it's just too easy, especially the busier you are. Like, I Instacart my groceries, I DoorDash when I don't have time. You know, it's my way of reducing my stress.
Yes, makes life easier.
It's my habit. I'm going to DoorDash.
No. It's actually smart. It's saving you time, right? I'm all for like outsourcing anything that you can afford to do to give to somebody else. So yeah.
So we are out of time. I have absolutely loved this. And I know that your book is titled A Few Habits. And if a few is more than two, I think the definition, it's two or more. Yeah. We've gotten two of them.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to buy your book to get the rest.
Yeah. It's just a few good habits, but there are more than two. Yeah.
So I'm definitely looking forward to it. I will get on your website. I've got the link already. So I will go out there and make sure I pre-order. I at least let you know so I can get on the list.
That's right.
Any last minutes of wisdom or things that you thought of during our conversation that you want to make sure you touch on?
Well, I would just say, if you're the kind of person that is super busy, you've got a lot on your plate, and you really want to feel like you're showing up as your best self in all areas of your life, that's really what high performance is. Sometimes you hear the term high performance and you think, oh, that's just like for, I don't know, elite athletes or Silicon Valley CEOs or something. But I really think high performance is for everybody, or anybody that wants to live a life that they feel like they're showing up as their best self. They're doing their best at work or in whatever their career is. And they're doing it without burning out their relationships and without the cost to their health. Right. So you can be a high achiever, do big things, but do it in an unhealthy way where you end up damaging your relationships or your health. That's not high performance. High performance is when you kind of quote unquote have it all, where you have that performance at work in your career where you feel really good that you're showing up and doing your best work, but you also are able to spend time with your family, spend time doing the things that you love, and your body and your mental and physical health are not taking a hit. So I just want to say it's possible. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. I actually think that's the wrong approach. I think keeping it simple, going back to common sense practices, back to basics is actually the key to reducing that stress and really being a high performer. So I just want to say it's possible, because I know there was a point in my life where I certainly didn't think it was possible. So if you're kind of at that point, check out the book, keep going, because it really is possible to get kind of everything you want in terms of high performance.
Amazing. I love this. I always think, one of these days I'm going to get tired of talking to people, but these are my favorite days of the week, is when I get to chat with somebody and learn, even though, we're adults and we should have learned all this stuff. It's still, I think the repetition of hearing it more than once and over again helps to just dig it in deeper and just to really, let those roots grow.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate your time. And listener Julie and I think we've mentioned this, we're not medical professionals. We are here for entertainment, people that have been there and done that and have found a better way for us. And hopefully it can help you too. So enjoy. Stay tuned for the next episode. Talk to you soon.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Laura Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss a next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.